we're going to take a look at where the race is, as it is day 16 of the federal election campaign and just 3 weeks until Election Day. So what is the current state of the race as this third week of the campaign gets underway? Well, as luck would have it, Éric Grenier is here. He is the author of the writ.ca. He also runs the poll tracker at CBC News.ca. Okay, Éric, big picture, how are the parties currently polling?
Well, we haven't really seen actually that much movement in the polls over the last little while, and we can look at where the polling average is. This is a compilation of all the polls that are being published throughout this campaign. We have the Liberals right now leading with 44% support across the country. The Conservatives are in second with 37%, and again, hasn't seen too much movement over the last little while. The New Democrats are now just under 9% support on average, the Bloc Québécois at 5%, and the Greens at 2.5%. So that gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives has been holding around that 6-7 point mark for the last few days.
Okay, I think at around 37-38%, Stephen Harper had a majority. So how does this translate into seat projections in this election?
Yeah, it really makes a difference who is on top, right? So if we look at the seat projections so far, where things stand right now in our projections, there we go, on this side, the Liberals. Right now projected to win 204 seats. There's a range of 185 to 219, so there is a little bit of uncertainty about just how much they would win if an election were held today. The Conservatives are at 117 seats, so would actually drop a few from where they were in the last election. The Bloc Québécois is at 17 in the projection. The New Democrats are at 4 with a range of between 1 and 11 seats, and the Greens are at 1 seat with a range of about 0 to 2.
Okay, even the most optimistic Liberal I speak with doesn't see 204, but who knows, right? Weird elections, but like Carney and Poilievre were campaigning in BC today, so let's have a look at that province. Where does that currently stand, Éric?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why the Liberals are so high in the projections are in part because of the numbers we see in these battleground regions. So we can take a look at where things stand right now. In British Columbia, the Liberals are leading right now with about 43%. In BC, the Conservatives are at second with 38. The NDP is at only 13, and the Greens are at only 4. This is one of the reasons why the Liberals are projected to win as many seats as they are, is because they are leading in BC, and with the NDP and Green numbers down so much, there could be a lot of potential pickups for the Liberals. And in Ontario, I mean, this is where elections are always decided, and there we see as well that the Liberals do have a pretty big lead in Ontario. If we can take a look at the Ontario numbers right now, we have the Liberals leading with, we'll have to wait till those numbers come up.
We got a lag. It's coming. They tell me it's coming, Éric. Great. Oh, there we go.
Right.
There we go.
Hey, they were just ticked
okay,
up.
so those Liberal numbers are even bigger in Ontario, right? 49%. That's massive, right?
Yeah, 49%, nearing 50% in the polls in Ontario. The Conservatives are at 38%. The more important number might be the gap between the two. That we're looking at right now, it is nearly an 11-point gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives in Ontario. The NDP at just 8% support in the polls. In the province, the Greens at 2%. And because the Liberals have that much support in Ontario, they are in a position to win 80, 90 seats in the province. If they can pull that off, if these numbers hold, I mean, that's the ball game right there.
Right. Okay. And just on that, like Éric, for the Conservatives to have a credible path to a majority, they need 70 seats in Ontario, right? Like they either need to come way up or the Liberals need to go way down. So what are you watching for in the polling in week 3 of the election campaign?
Well, looking to see what's going to happen with some of these numbers, because we've actually seen some divergence in some of the polls. There's been a handful of polls that have been coming out showing the gap is very close between the Conservatives and the Liberals. We've seen some that show a 10 or 12-point lead for the Liberals, which would just be a massive, well over 200 seats for the party. When we look at what's the consensus of the polls, most of them do seem to be in between that kind of 0-point race versus a 10-point race. But the important point for the Conservatives is that even at that 0-point race, that tie, the Liberals probably still win more seats. So even in the worst polls for the Liberals, the best polls for the Conservatives, Mark Carney probably still comes out on top.
You need to see a Conservative lead 3-4 points. Is that what we're thinking?
3-4 points at least for a minority, not for a majority.
Right. Okay. Éric, always appreciate it. That's Éric Grenier with the writ.ca. Okay, let's bring it back here to the panel. Because there was a focus on British Columbia, let's go to our people who are in British Columbia. Rachel, when you look at those numbers, the Liberals and the Conservatives are both going to gain. It would suggest. But the Conservatives need to be in first place there, if not in vote share, but definitely in seat count by a pretty good margin if they're going to carry things on the 28th. So what's your sense of how things are happening in BC?
Well, first of all, David, I told you weeks ago that it would be Battleground BC, and we were going to be very important in this race, so I'm feeling good about myself. The other thing is in BC, that NDP vote is so important. I mean, I'm seeing polls out here that they could pick up one seat, the NDP, in a province that has an NDP government, has a strong federal NDP presence here. That is really affecting the outcome for the Conservatives here. But in terms also Saanich Gulf Islands in British Columbia, which is held by Elizabeth May, the co-leader of the Greens, is also not secure for her. That's traditionally been a Conservative riding, and we'll see how that one plays out as well. But BC is one to watch on election night. With that said, in terms of the federal polls, I mean, we have a long time until Election Day still, to the dismay of many tired staffers across the country.
And journalists.
Yeah, exactly, journalists. But there's a couple of big things that I'm watching, one being the debate. So we know that they are doing a French debate, not Mark Carney's strongest language, and then the English debate. Pierre Poilievre is an incredible orator. His policy, like I said earlier, has been very clear. He's come out with massive policies every day of this campaign. Mark Carney, on the other hand, hasn't. So what will they be talking about at that debate? And then, of course, Election Day, and what Canadians go to the ballot box feeling, where Donald Trump is at that point, and whether or not Pierre Poilievre can make that argument that it's the domestic policies, it's the Canada First policies that will be impacting Canadians, that's what they should be voting for.
Rob, I don't know how long you've been in Vancouver, but what's your sense of how the race is out there?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is because I asked Éric Grenier where I should go to look at what was happening, and he suggested that I come here. And tomorrow I'm going to a riding, Abbotsford.
Right.
A Liberal has not been elected in Abbotsford since I was a toddler, probably, and they have a chance. They have a chance there because there is a bit of a split on the right, but there is some strength there that hasn't been seen for a long, long time, and look at where the leaders are going. Mr. Carney was in Victoria today. Not a lot of Liberals elected on Vancouver Island. That's usually NDP versus Conservative. He's going to be in Saskatchewan later this week. Who's coming to Burnaby over the next few days? I'm told that Jagmeet Singh is coming to Burnaby to defend his own riding fairly early in the campaign. So yeah, there's lots happening in British Columbia, happening for the Liberals, and it's if things hold, this could be the cherry on top of a victory for the Liberals if things hold.
Yeah.
I think we heard a mention there of the debates. Right now, they're practicing for the debates. They might be campaigning, but part of their day is spent in debate prep and practicing. That will be very, very important as well.
Yeah, I think the last Liberal to win Victoria would have been David Anderson, who was the fisheries minister, if I'm remembering correctly. So, Jordan, when you look at that, I mean, the bulk of the NDP caucus is in British Columbia. And, you know, the way the national polls are, I mean, last week I think Eric had them at 3. This week he has them at 4. So, I mean, it's better to be going in that direction, right?
I mean, take it, David.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, Mr. Singh is not talking about being prime minister anymore. It's about electing new Democrats. And eventually you see them maybe hunkering down a little bit. I mean, what are your thoughts on how BC is splitting right now and how it affects your crowd?
Well, look, BC is unquestionably very important for New Democrats. That's where their greatest seat density is and where they have a lot of strength, I would say, also on the ground, of course. You've got really strong incumbents. You've got people like Peter Julian, like Don Davies, like Jenny Kwan, and on Vancouver Island, you know, popular mayor running in Esquimalt. So there's good candidates. There's excellent ground game there. You know, you had Premier Eby out on Friday telling people to vote NDP. And I think that what's going to be really important in British Columbia is that we know that there's a lot of voters out there who their first choice would be to vote NDP. But they're concerned both about Trump and they're also concerned about Pierre Poilievre. Right. And they are wanting to, maybe at this moment, they're considering voting strategically to stop him. So what's going to be important over the next couple of weeks for the NDP is creating a bit of a permission structure, a pathway for those voters to feel comfortable that Pierre Poilievre is not going to win and to feel confident that they can come back and they can vote where they want to vote with the NDP. They can re-elect some of their good MPs there. and gain back some of the vote share that way.
Jono, when people look at the lead, because the Liberals, while not leading in every region, the Atlantic, Quebec, Ontario, and BC, that's the four pillars of a Liberal government, and you're leading there. They point to the debate. How bad do you think Mark Carney would have to do in the debate to fundamentally alter the nature of this race?
The debates, any number of debates, first of all, in Quebec itself, Yves-François Blanchet has come out of the two debates where he's run as leader, and he has improved his polling numbers.
Yeah.
In 2019.
And that's the threat in Quebec for sure.
And in 2021. Yeah. And as Quebec goes, very often the rest of the country goes. So I don't know that you would see the exact same surge everywhere, but there's an interesting comparison or parallel between the NDP and the Bloc. And it just sort of, one is in Quebec and one is in the rest of the country, which is this a binary campaign? Is this a binary election? Your choice is binary. It's Poilievre or Carney, and that's it. And everyone else just doesn't matter. Or as Jordan said, do we get back to a point where, it looks like Team A is going to win, so I can give my vote to Team C or D because it's not going to impact the overall. That's what the Bloc and the NDP are hoping for. Blanchet today was saying, I never look at the polls. The polls never tell me anything. I always do well after the debates. But by the way, the polls are wrong. So he's starting to get desperate. You didn't hear him say that in 2019, in 2021, where, now he has seats that he's afraid of losing as opposed to picking them up. And for the Liberals, what they really need to start focusing on is, okay, people have a sense of who Mark Carney is now. They didn't have that a month ago or two. They think he's a very credible option. How do the Liberals convert that into a ground game? How do they make sure that people who are inclined to vote for him go out and vote? Right. And there's 3 weeks to go. There's a lot of work to do. This is not a done deal.
So, Jordan, if I can, I'd like to explore the psychology of the NDP voter for a second, a little bit more in this dynamic. Can you say they need to be comfortable that they're assured essentially of a Liberal government and not a Conservative government before they go back to the New Democrats, who they voted for last time? What does that look like? Does it have to be the Éric Grenier 200-seat projection, or is just an overall vibe that Carney's probably going to win, whether it's a minority or a majority? Does it need to be a majority because of Trump? How do you view it?
I think it needs to be a sense that they feel comfortable, that there will be some sort of a wave, some sort of a majority happening. Now, most people are not, with due respect to Éric, they're not following in that level of granular detail.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
They're talking to their friends and family. They're trying to find out what's happening, where the wind's blowing on the election. So they need that sense that it's inevitable at this point, or that there is a certainty that Carney and the Liberals will form government. And so the number to watch there, of course, is something that is polled on frequently, which is who do people think is going to win? Right. And so we are seeing that number rise for the Liberals, which is probably a necessary precondition for some of those NDP voters coming back. And I do think that the other thing that the NDP has to do then is make a case to pull those voters back. And so that's what you're seeing Jagmeet Singh out there doing, talking about why it matters, why it's important to have New Democrats in that parliament, especially in the case of a majority Liberal government, to be there to defend the things like healthcare, like social programs that Canadians rely on. And look at all the things that they were able to get with just 24 MPs. Imagine what they can do if there's more.
So Rob...
David, if I can...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, very quickly here. The other party that needs the NDP to come up, of course, is the Conservatives. Yeah. Because without a robust NDP, they can't win a lot of ridings. They depend on three-way splits. I'm looking for Mr. Harper tonight, former Prime Minister, to be the guy who really goes after Mark Carney tonight. They have to begin to put a dent in his reputation. Mr. Harper worked with Mark Carney. He's going to have to, if he ever took questions, answer the question of why he wanted him to be finance minister as opposed to Mr. Poilievre. But I look for Mr. Harper to really go after Mr. Carney at the rally tonight, and to do so with that in mind as well, to try and get New Democrats to feel less comfortable with Mr. Carney too. So watch for that tonight.
How hard can he go at the guy, though, that he offered the finance minister's job to? Because he's had many, many, many opportunities now to say that is not a true story, and he has never taken the opportunity. So that tells you that was at least the conversation. How hard do you go at the guy who offered that job?
I would be surprised if he took questions after his speech. Yeah. But he's going to say, as the guy who knows Mark Carney, here's what I can tell you about him, and here's what I can tell you about Pierre Poilievre, and allow Mr. Poilievre. He hasn't been able to back off, Mr. Poilievre. He's, as we all know, the most pugnacious politician in Canada, and at times he sounds Trumpy. Even his own people will say that. Tonight, he might be able to stand back a little bit. He doesn't have to toss the red meat. Mr. Harper will toss the red meat tonight.
Rachel, quick thoughts on what Mr. Harper might say and what impact it might have before we give the update from the Conservative campaign today.
Well, you have to remember that Pierre Poilievre used to work for Prime Minister Harper as his staffer as well. He was the parliamentary, somebody mentioned that Pierre was a parliamentary secretary. He was the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, to Stephen Harper, many years ago. And so they have a close relationship. I think what we're going to get is really a look at who Pierre Poilievre is and who Mark Carney really is, in the words of the former Prime Minister. But what I'm looking for tonight is just how many people are in that room. We cannot go on without talking about the numbers of Canadians that are coming out in droves to these rallies across the country in small farming communities, not downtown metropolises. People really want to see him. They want to hear his plan that he's put forward. And I think tonight's going to be extremely exciting in Edmonton for the Conservatives.
No, the expectation is 10, 11,000 or
Yeah.
more, and they have been massive crowds, there's no question.